mbrëma të gjithëve. Unë jam Evi Kokalari dhe siç e dini këtë javën e fundit kam qenë në Shqipëri duke u munduar të ndihmoj dhe të fus rrymën konservatore amerikane në Shqipëri dhe të bashkojmë me të djathtën shqiptare që ka kohë që vuan dhe më vjen mirë që shikoj shumë individ të angazhuar këtë javën e fundit për të forcuar opozitën shqiptare dhe kjo është një problem që të tërë shqiptarët duhet i vënë vëmendje dhe të mundohen të luftojnë sa më parë për të ngritur opozitën e vërtet të djathtë shqiptare. Për këtë arsye kam vendosur të sjell një nga personazhet më të forta në lëvizjen konservatore në Amerikë, një njeri që do t'ju flasi direkt juve shqiptarëve, popullit, në mënyrën se si ta ndërtojmë, pse është e rëndësishme të ta ndërtojmë dhe çfarë po ndodh në botë në përgjithësi këto vitet e fundit. Ai është Steve Bannon. Good evening, Mr. Bannon. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me. A big honor.
So, as you may know, I'm in Albania because we have had some problems with the Democratic Party, which is supposed to be the right wing. And I've been trying to tell everyone that the right wing needs to be built in a way that is very similar to the Republican Party in America and has to be very strong. And it's the only way that we can take back the government. But people have a little bit of a hard time to understand how do we build it. The Democratic Party has been destroyed in the past 8 years in Albania, and I think that you may be the medicine for the mind of so many in Albania, and you are the only person that can truly tell the crowd where to go from here, how to take it back, and I'm going to give the platform to you right now.
Listen, this is the key issue within kind of conservative or right-wing politics throughout the world. So don't think it's unique to Albania. I would actually make a comparison of the old Republican Party as it existed under the Bushes, right, and kind of the establishment Republican Party that over time just became another part of the globalist movement versus Donald Trump in true populism and true economic nationalism. And you know, we face many of the same issues you're facing. This is one of the reasons that the Trump movement right now, the Trump movement is so focused on a handful of basic issues like how the election was stolen in November, right, from the Republican Party. How did this happen? Number two is the invasion of our southern border, what's going on there. Number three is about the economics. Number four is the whole issue with vaccines and mass mandates and these radical cultural Marxist theories like critical race theory. How do they get into the schools? So you've seen across the board in the United States really a populist uprising. And the media has just started to report it on it. And this would be my strongest recommendation to you in Albania of how to really build something with resilience and strength and a foundation is take it down to the basic core level. It's mass mobilization, but not just for rallies and not just for protests and not just for civil disobedience or direct action or anything like that, but really go back and start to seize these institutions at the grassroots level. And let me be specific about this. If you look at the power, particularly what's happened in the West, in the United States, so many of our institutions, whether it's the universities, whether it's media, whether it's pop culture, whether it's even our mainstream churches, have all been taken over by essentially people that are anti the Judeo-Christian West, people that are very much cultural Marxists, people that are closer to the Chinese Communist Party ideology than they are to kind of freedom in the core tenets of self-reliance and beliefs in the Judeo-Christian West. How did this happen? Since the 1960s, these radicals have really gone out and taken over these institutions. We have to have a counter to that. Now, that's why in the United States right now, for instance, there's a huge article on NBC where their hair's on fire about Steve Bannon is now talking to people that will be the potential staffers in the government when Trump wins again in 2024. And we're now getting a vanguard, a cadre of those people. There's 4,000 appointees in any U.S. government, political appointees that control basically 4 million government employees. We're getting those people trained right now as cadres, as really cells to think about Trump's policies, right? And more personnel to kind of train them, not like happened before in the first Trump administration where we weren't really prepared to grab the government by the throat and actually make it do and implement Trump's policies. They've had other articles about moms, school moms, going to these school boards and saying, you can't teach critical race theory because it's Marxist. You can't have my kids with a mask because I don't see what the science is. And you're certainly not going to have a forced vaccination of my child. So they're confronting and taking over school boards. Today, they're talking about getting the FBI involved in these moms that are taking over school boards. We have common citizens, basic citizens in the country that are taking over election boards, that are taking over the Republican Party at the grassroots level. And it's causing the establishment to freak out. The greatest power you have is the power of truth combined with the power of will. And that is personified by working class and middle class people that said, I've had enough. And I just don't want to sit there and complain anymore. I just don't want to watch media. I don't want to listen to talk radio or just listen to TV shows. I want to act. Remember, what's going to separate victory from defeat here is action. And the way to get action is to motivate people at the lowest levels to start to take over these institutions. I can tell you right now in the United States, it's having a tremendous impact. All the polling of the Biden regime is collapsing. Not just their radical policies, but their incompetence in enforcing it. And also, there's a new spirit here of fighters that say, I'm going to fight this, and I'm going to fight this within my own span of control, whether it's a town council meeting, a city council, a board, a school board, or a precinct committee run by the Republican Party, which we can take over. So you've seen it in the polling. You're seeing this intensity building for the 2022 midterms, which is only a little over a year away, where right now we're thinking we can win 100-seat majority in the Congress and really stop all this madness that's happening under Nancy Pelosi and use that as a predicate, not just to impeach Joe Biden, but then to immediately launch a campaign for President Trump so that we have a sweeping landslide in the White House in 2024, and we're ready to take power immediately. We're ready to really take over the government and implement the MAGA policies, the Make America Great policies, the America First policies, the really Trump policies. And so the thing I would, and by the way, we just had some individuals that came into the war room today from Peru, and the same thing's happening. The same thing is happening in Albania is the same thing you're seeing happen in Latin America, whether it's in Peru, whether it's in Chile, whether it's Bolsonaro in Brazil. This fight is a global fight with conservatives, people on the right, against the globalists and the Marxists everywhere. And so, in the Soros-backed, the Soros-backed woke capital throughout the world. So this is a global conflict fought in each nation. And the solution is going to be the same. We understand we have the right policies. We understand we have the right set of values around the Judeo-Christian West and about that everyone's made in the image and likeness of God. Right, and our rights come from God. They don't come from any government, and it's based upon self-reliance, self-actualization, in prosperity for the individual and their community. So we know we have the right values, and now it's just executing on that. And that's why I would strongly recommend continue your fight, but focus on the grassroots level and focus on the activization of your communities.
So. Obviously, I live in America, and everything that you say, I have lived through it, and I believe strongly in everything on how to take America back to begin with. But I came to Albania, and people are so discouraged, truly discouraged. And they saw me being here next to the former president and former prime minister of Albania, which is one of the founders of the Democratic Party. They saw me as new light and some hope that things can change. And a question that I get all the time is, if we're gonna manage to bring Donald Trump back in America, and I really want you to tell them everything we're doing, the work you're doing with the Chinese party, with the voter frauds, with the vaccine that you have been fighting this for a long time, but can Albanians hear it from you? Can Trump come back? Will he come back on 2024? Can he come back before that? Just if you can explain everything that we talk every day, that will be great.
So first off, there's three things that we get to the bottom to, and we focus every day here, to get to the bottom of what happened in the Wuhan lab, to get responsibility and accountability for that, to get to the bottom of what happened on 3 November, what happened in our election here, and who's accountable for the big steal. And number three, get to the bottom of what happened on January 6th, when we had this incident at the Capitol. Here's the, just cut to the chase. Donald Trump, and this is our theory from day one, and we now can back it up with evidence coming out of Arizona and others. Donald Trump won the election on November 3rd, okay? The Biden regime is not legitimate, and I've said this from day one, and we can prove this in every state. We can prove it with the receipts, and that's one of the reasons there's this huge fight. Now, what I believe you're going to see in the United States, you're going to start to see a decertification of electors of certain of these states. And that will put us really into a constitutional issue of what happens. Whether that gets worked out or not, the legitimacy of the Biden regime is already held in question. The Economist magazine did a poll 2 weeks ago, a YouGov poll 2 weeks ago, that independents, not Republicans and not Democrats, but independents in the United States, 42% of independents in the United States believe that Biden won the presidency illegitimacy, question his legitimacy as president. That is a huge number, particularly the way the media has suppressed everything about the election. So we know now, in looking at the polling and the complete collapse of the Biden regime across every demographic and every spectrum of the United States, and the reason is we're having a massive invasion of the southern border. NBC News just predicted 400,000 illegal aliens will enter the country at the southern border in the month of October alone. Okay, so we're having an invasion of our country from the south that dwarfs what Europe saw in 2015, and I understand that that was horrific, the migrant crisis of 2015. We have a situation in the United States that we may have over 2 to 3 million illegal aliens in the country just in this year alone, the first year of the Biden regime. So Biden's poll numbers are collapsing. We're basically a year away from the midterm elections, of when you really control, which the elections for the House of Representatives, which control so much in our system, right? We now know that we think we're going to take a 50, 60, maybe a 100-seat majority in that. And that's when this entire thing changes. Nancy Pelosi will be thrown out, and we will literally shut down all of this madness that the Biden administration is doing, and we're going to choke them off with the money. We're not going to appropriate the money to keep this regime going. These are going to be titanic, massive fights. And every day is a fight to get there, on the debt limit, on all these spending bills. I mean, I've never seen an intensity of American politics like I'm seeing now. But that just leads us to 2022, and that is the predicate. I strongly believe that once we take the House of Representatives, we should immediately move to impeach Joe Biden for any number of things, right? From Afghanistan to the southern border, but particularly, I think we've got to go back and look at actually how he took office in November of 2020. But I'm a strong advocate that we've got to put impeachment on the table. After that, that leads to Trump. And people in Albania should know, as we sit here today on the 2nd of October, the year of our Lord 2021, Donald Trump is running for president. There's absolutely no doubt of that. Now, he's not announcing because of a number of financial and legal issues that he wants to hold, I think, his candidacy until after the midterms in November. But Donald J. Trump is running again for president. And if Donald Trump runs, he's going to win. There's no doubt. He won in 2020. Okay, I can tell you that as a matter of fact, and I can walk you through the numbers of how he did it. So no, this is by far the most intense time in American politics. And anybody that sees, oh, they're at civil war and people want to break up the country, that's all nonsense. I think there's a great awakening among the Trump base, right? That we are actually the vast majority of people in this country. I think we're going to get 50% of the Hispanic vote in 2022 and even more in 2024. Working class Hispanics in our country, American citizens, understand that this open borders invasion hurts them. It brings in so many low-wage workers. I think we're going to get 50% of African-American males, African-American men in 2022 and with President Trump. Right now, on the populist nationalist side, you're having an awakening that people realize that these Biden policies, these policies of the left to flood the zone with cheap labor by illegal aliens is only hurting working class people of every ethnicity and race. And so right now there's an awakening here that among the Trump people that, hey, we won in 2016, we actually won in 2020, and we've got a whole new set of demographics in this movement, Hispanics, African Americans, Asians, anti-CCP, anti-Chinese Communist Party Asians that are coming into our movement, that we are the dominant political We're the dominant political party in this. And what we have to do is throw out the country club Republicans. Remember, there's a slice of the Republican Party that are globalists. They believe in the party of Davos. They believe in the World Economic Forum. They don't think Soros is a bad guy. That's the old Wall Street corporate faction of the Republican Party. We want nothing to do with those people. We would rather take in working class Democrats that are patriots into our movement of every ethnicity and every race. So no, I think you're seeing fundamentally that people every day, and I realize when you look at the media, it was like it's total chaos. It looks like we're at each other's throats. It's very intense. But there is every day a building optimism and focus. And this is why I think it's so important in Albania to get back to the basics. One of the reasons I think people are getting excited is they feel like they're now getting more empowered. They're taking over school boards. They're taking over town councils. They're taking over these committees on the Republican Party. They're taking over local elections boards, where it doesn't cost them a lot of money to have to write a check as a donor. They're feeling like they're empowered. And once people feel like they're empowered, right, they didn't say, hey, I can see how we can make this work. So no, I think right now it's a great time for the Trump movement. And I think you see that the values of the Trump movement is global. It's in Peru, it's in Colombia, it's in Brazil, it's in the United Kingdom, France, in Albania. This is where a global movement, right, with each nation having its own particular characteristics, which is what we want. Each country is different. It's different by its culture, it's different by its history, it's different by its people, and those differences are great. We want those differences, but you still have a core of common values that says, no, I don't be a multicultural globalist entity where we're just a small fry and we report to Wall Street and the City of London and Frankfurt, right, all the global capital markets, and particularly the party of Davos up in the Davos, the World Economic Forum, you know, Klaus Schwab and Soros and that crowd. We don't want that. We want local control. We want national control of our government and our people and our society and our culture, and that is only getting stronger. And by the way, don't let the media think. I don't care if it's in India, if it's in Japan, if it's in Australia, if it's in Brazil, United States, Albania, anywhere. That is the one that's got the energy, that's on the move. And by the way, we have incredibly tough fights in front of us. I don't want to mislead anybody this is going to be easy. It's going to be incredibly tough because we're talking about money and we're talking about power, right? So it's going to be very tough, but we're going to win this.
So I really like the fact that you keep referring to it as the Davos Party, because I've been saying it, they've been building this up for years and years. This was so famous, and all the billionaires like George Soros and Bill Gates and everybody else used to go there, and this was a mega plan that everybody was working on, exactly what we're seeing basically the past year. So now, the problem is that Soros has about 5 offices in the Balkans, just to give you an idea that his roots are so deep in Albania, Serbia, Kosovo, the whole Macedonia, the whole Balkans. And everybody understands we have so many elements in the party that has been financed by Soros. And as a matter of fact, they're saying the chairman right now that they are trying to remove was someone that somehow was financed by Soros. He knew he is very easily manipulated, and we're at the breaking point right now. So if you can say, I just want you to repeat everything about George Soros so everybody can hear it very carefully. Why is he bad, and how can we remove him, and why we should remove him? 2, 3 things on this will help a lot for them to understand.
Look, one thing to put in perspective about the importance of the fight in Albania is that the Balkans have been the key to so much of the 20th century and the 21st century. So you are right now in that area of the world that is one of the central geopoliticals. I would say the Balkans up through Eastern Hungary and in Poland. They're right now that and in the South China Sea. There's 3 major geopolitical hotspots in the world. One is the Balkans up through Eastern Europe. The other is around the northwest frontier in India, where you have Pakistan, Afghanistan, China, right now with our ally India, and the other is obviously the South China Sea. You're in one of the 3 hotspots, and most important with the tectonic plate shifts in politics. And that's why the World Economic Forum, that's why the party of Davos, this kind of collection of global elites backed by global capital, have such a focus. That's why Soros has 5 offices in the Balkans. One thing, let's talk about Soros for a second. Are very few people as smart, as tough, and as cunning as George Soros. So every time you go up against Soros, you're going up against the world's best. Now, he's got a very different, he is a no borders. He wants complete flow of capital throughout the world and complete flow of labor. He doesn't want national borders. Now, he will actually argue, I'm anti-authoritarian. He doesn't want what the Chinese Communist Party right now is kind of in a fight with the CCP, which I don't think is a serious fight, but he's saying he's a open borders guy. He's from the open society. He doesn't want any national borders. He doesn't really want any national cultures. He's a guy that is principally a currency trader, and he wants totally open borders and totally open labor borders. That is only a formula for complete slavery by working class and middle class people. That's really where you become a cog in the machine. And let me be very specific. Let's go back to 2017. On the third week of January in 2017, there were two speeches given that are very important speeches. One that was given, I think, on Wednesday, January 18th, was in Davos, and it was Chairman Xi at the invitation of Soros and all the guys at the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, and he went up there and talked about a kind of a new world order, and that new world order was really a network effect. China was at the railhead for the manufacturing with one belt, one road, all the way through Central Asia to the Balkans, all the way up through Eastern Europe and into Europe and across into Sub-Saharan Africa, the Caribbean, Latin America, was a network effect driven by China. And that was going to be the new world order. And by the way, everybody at the World Economic Forum loved it. They loved this kind of new concept of one belt, one road, and what it was going to bring, and how this network effect of markets and people and capital was going to be brought together. Okay, everybody, all the consultants, all the McKinsey and Booz Allen and all the banks, J.P. Morgan and Citicorp, and of course all the investment banks, Goldman Sachs, everybody there, all the global media, the Economist, the Financial Times, they praised Xi as a visionary, that this was a vision of the future that would be sustainable, peaceful, and prosperous, okay? 2 days later, Donald J. Trump gave his inaugural address, which I had a hand in helping President Trump write. And that was what's called the American Carnage speech. But what it really was a defense of the Westphalian system, the system that the West...
I'm really very familiar with that speech.
And it was about the nation state and about individual people and why it's incumbent upon individual people for their own freedom and their own nationality and their own culture and their own society to have these independent units we call nations. And then as a brotherhood of nations throughout the world, that's how the world will have peace and prosperity. Two radically different ideas. Now, in Davos, they praise Xi. He's the genius. He's the man of peace. Think about it for a second. All of those people, whether they're in investment banking or commercial banking, hedge funds, capital markets, the media, the consultants, the lawyers, and the auditors, they're all in the same business. That business, they're in the information business. They have all the inside information of how the world works, right? They all knew at that time about the Uyghurs. They all knew about the concentration camp with the Uyghurs. They all knew about the persecution of the Falun Gong. They knew about the persecution of the democracy movement. They knew about the organ harvesting where the Chinese Communist Party takes live human beings, cuts their organs out, and sells them on the open market or uses them for members of the Chinese Communist Party, right? A kidney or a heart, okay? They knew about the suppression of the Christians. They knew about the suppression of the Catholic Church. They knew about the camps. They knew about disappearing anybody in China that disagrees with them. They understood about the firewall. This is the hypocrisy of George Soros, Klaus Schwab, and the entire party at Davos. They knew everything about the concentration camps, the murders, the torture of the poor people of China, Lao Baijing, the working people. They knew it all. And you know what they did? They didn't care. Here's why. It's very simple. It's exactly why they don't care about anybody in Albania. You are nothing but trash to them because all they care about is profits, okay? All they care about is money. And if somebody can make them more money, they do not care if you don't have individual rights. They don't care what your life is. All you are right now is a small element of production for them and consumption. As long as you perform that with no freedom at all, that's the function they want you to pay. That's why they have no moral standing. They absolutely are amoral, okay? In the West, we stand for something. We stand for the betterment of mankind. We understand that every individual is made in the image and likeness of God and inspired by the Holy Spirit, that divine spark, and that makes you unique, okay? And that you have value, you have worth, that no government in the world, no World Economic Forum or George Soros or Klaus Schwab, your rights don't come from them. Your rights don't come from the Chinese Communist Party. Your rights don't come from the Albanian government. Your rights come naturally from God itself, okay? And that makes you unique, and that makes you worthy of fighting for. And that's the fundamental difference. These people understand nothing. They value nothing. They're the worst individuals in the world, and I would argue the worst individuals in world history. And it's that global dictatorship, okay? And I'm not some conspiracy theory guy. I'm just telling you the way the system works, okay? That's the way the system works. And what you're fighting for in Albania is the same thing Bolsonaro is fighting for in Brazil, the same thing Modi's fighting for in India, the same thing people in Japan are fighting for. And most importantly, it's the same thing that the deplorables are fighting for in the United States with President Trump. And that's why we have a noble cause. And that's why, frankly, we're not going to lose, and we can't lose, because if we lose this fight, it's over for mankind.
So you're sure we're not going to lose this fight? Because we're winning this. So,
we're going to win. By the way, I'm not saying there's not going to be. There are going to be days it feels like you're losing. But first off, we're going to win this because we have to win this. There is no option. We have no option for failure. We have to win this. And that's why, quite frankly, I've dedicated my life to this, and other people I admire have dedicated their lives to this. This is not something you can do part-time. It's a full-time. But it's worth it because you're defending the core principles of the Judeo-Christian West and what has made this world unique by our culture and civilization. It's worth fighting for. When we understand it's attracting people from every culture, every society in this fight where they feel that, yes, this is a spiritual battle that we're fighting in the battlefield of materialism and politics and capital markets and economics and culture and all that. But it's essentially a spiritual fight, and that's why we have people throughout the world of every different ethnicity and race and gender and religion that has supported this.
So if I understand correctly, you're telling my people just hang in there, fight hard, you're not alone, and we're going to overcome this, and we're going to win.
And yes, as long as you don't quit. I like who's on our side of the football. As long as you do not quit, you fight every day, we've got this.
So before I let you go, two quick questions. I always said that if you were still with the administration, I don't think we would have lost. And I think a lot, you know that, a lot of us say that.
Very kind.
But if you were there, we were never going to come to the point of everything that we went through and we witnessed. Are you going to be part of the new administration? Question number one. I'm going to let you finish that first.
Look, God's will and God works as God works. The one thing I think, look, Donald J. Trump, and he's the first to admit, he's not particularly religious in the churchy sense, the sense that people have traditional religion, although he's a very spiritual guy at the end of the day. But he's a providential figure. Divine providence had him, as any billionaire at his age, buying the golf courses, having a beautiful wife, a great family. He in his late 60s, early 70s, he could have done anything he wanted to. He didn't have to come and run for politics and to have them try to destroy his family, destroy his business, try to put him in jail, impeach him. He didn't need to do that. He did it for a reason, that he believes in the fundamental decency of the American people and that America's got to get back on track, okay? He was providential in 2016, and I can tell you of this, I know from evidence, we were so outnumbered, outgunned, outorganized, they had more money. Clinton had everything, the media, they had it all, and we beat them. Why? The American people in the MAGA movement. In 2020, there's no doubt that Biden's illegitimate and they stole the election. We understand that, and we're proving it, and we're going to, obviously get remedies in the future for that. But once again, it was providential that happened, and here's why. They flipped over their cards. We now know exactly what Biden and the radical left stands for. It's no more like old Democratic Party, because I come from a family of working-class Democrats, 30, 40, 50 years ago. These are radical, Soros-trained, Soros-backed cultural Marxists, okay? Whether it's critical race theory in your schools, the Fauci's, raising of scientism, not science, about the vaccines and the mass mandates, whether it's the invasion of the southern border, no borders, allowing illegal alien criminals out into the U.S. population. Across the board, they flipped all their cards over. The great thing of Biden stealing this is that there's no more question now in the United States what one side stands for and what the other side stands for. And now with all these radical spending bills and what they're trying to do to bury us in debt, it's very obvious. And that is providential about November 3rd. There was a good thing that came out of it. The good thing was we can now understand, and nobody can have any middle ground. You can't kind of say, well, I kind of like what they're doing. You're either with us or you're against us, okay? So it's very providential. What I'm doing and what I've been doing from day one is, and what I was doing for a decade before I met President Trump, is building a populist nationalist movement in the United States and globally, okay? And I'm going to do that the next, as long as God allows me to live, whether it's a week or whether it's 20 years. This is what I'm going to be doing. But what I can tell you is this political movement is going to take back direct power in 2022 in our Congress, and then it's going to take the White House in 2024. And so I think the key thing is let's win first, and then let's make sure we got the right people in place and the right policies in place.
Last question. Once we take the Democratic Party back here in Albania and they have the next convention, will you come to Albania and just speak to everyone? That's a promise.
It'd be an honor for me to, first of all, it'd be an honor for me to come and address you. Number two, like I said, the Balkans is one of the central, most important geopolitical part. What sometimes, because I know it's tough when you're in the fight, to pull the camera back and look, you're at one of the most important times in history, most important times your country's history, and your region is one of the most important places in the world. As goes the Balkans, so goes the world. And that's what it's happened so many times in the past. But it's clearly happened. And remember, the whole triggering event for World War I started in the Balkans, and that war lasted essentially almost 90 years to 1989 till the Berlin Wall came down. So the Balkans are incredibly important. The work you're doing is important. So one, it'd be an honor to come and address you. And number two,
I would consider it. It's a promise, correct?
A promise.
All right.
A commitment.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you for being here. And I hope to see you soon to address them again. I will be bugging you again for this, maybe in a few weeks. And we can't wait to see you in Albania. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. An honor to address you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, sir.